There's no need even to have a college degree at all, or even high school. If somebody graduated from a great university, that may be an indication that they will be capable of great things, but it's not necessarily the case. If you look at, say, people like Bill Gates or Larry Ellison, Steve Jobs, these guys didn't graduate from college. But if you had a chance to hire them, of course, that would be a good idea. Just looking just for evidence of exceptional ability. And if there's a track record of exceptional achievement, then it's likely that that will continue into the future.
I think that the education system overall is becoming increasingly fragmented, just like media has become fragmented into these silos, these verticals. And it's much less about the generalist education and much more about the niche down education. And so I believe I want to find the best, mechanic and how he teaches mechanics to run better shops. I want to find the best salon owner so she can help salon owners run better salon clinics. I want to find the best lawn care guy and how he can package and sell his ability to help other people who do lawn care, because it's so much more practical. If you know you're going to go to lawn care, there's no college for that, and there should be. Yeah. And so that's kind of our investment thesis for acquisition.com, and that's what we do now, and the portfolio does right now over $100 million a year.
Well, education starts really early.
Yeah.
How would you change that right now with, let's say, the current schooling system, which seems to teach you kind of how to stay in line, how to think like everybody else, get your homework done on time, you got to show up at 8 a.m., yeah. School ends at 3. Do you think that's a good model? Obviously the answer is no. Hey, tell me your thoughts on that.
I think so. I've two broad statements is, I think the purpose of education is to teach people how to think rather than how to memorize. And especially now with technology that we have, if you can pass a test with having an iPhone with you, then in my opinion, the test was poorly designed, because it's not going to, and then we have to rewind into what is the purpose of education, right? The education system overall is the product of that is people who can add value to society, right? That's the product of the education system. The raw units are humans. The output of the system is people who can add value to society. Okay, cool. So if that's the system, then there's a lot of leeway there in terms of how we can get there. I think the system that we have set up is inherited from the factory worker when it was being designed versus now. Now I think we need a lot more problem solving skills than we did back then. A lot more dynamic thinking processes, divergent thinking processes. And if you're not familiar with this, is a fun little exercise. What Skool teaches right now is convergent thinking. And so that means that there's multiple variables and one correct answer, right? And so it's 1 + 1 = 2. There's only one correct answer. And now they're even telling you there's only one way to find the answer. And if you don't find it the way they want you to find it, then it's also wrong, which is ridiculous. But anyways, divergent thinking is when you have multiple variables, but multiple correct answers, which is how many different ways can you use a brick? And what's interesting about that is that you can also have multiple right answers and some answers that are more right than others, which becomes very difficult to grade, but also how the real world works. Yeah. And we're rewarded based on how right our YouTube video really is, right? Or how right our article is, or how right our product is, and how we can solve problems using more creative methods than trying to converge on a single answer. Because if it's a convergent thinking process, for the most part, it's already been kind of automated and everyone can do it, right? You get paid for what you can think of in the creative box of what are other people not thinking of.
You make learning stuff about astrophysics fun, and that's what's missing. It's not that people don't like to be educated, that they don't like to learn. They just don't want to be bored.
That's a perceptive point, because, think of the image we have of, let's say you're in a school where most people don't go to college, you're in high school, and then last day of school comes. What do people do? They toss their papers in the air as they run down the steps. School's out. No, what's the rock song? School's out for summer. Was it forever?
And then ever.
Then forever.
Ever.
So that attitude must mean the school didn't train you to embrace curiosity, that learning was a chore, and now the chores are over. So I think the educational system needs an adjustment. Forget whether or not you go to college, because you're going to spend more years not in school than in school, even if you do go to college. What you want, I think, are lifelong learners, lifelong curiosity.
Yes.
Where once you are trained and your curiosity is stimulated, the curiosity we all had as children. Children don't need to be taught to be curious. They are curious to the point of destruction of whatever it is they touch. Oh, what is this egg on the counter? What is this glass? What is this plate? What's under a rock? What happens if I pull a leg off of Daddy Long? They are experimenting with the world. We don't think of it that way, but that's what it is. They're all born scientists. And I say this often. You spend the first years of a child's life teaching it to walk and talk, then you spend the rest of its life telling it to shut up and sit down. It's this is the wrong combination. So speaking as an educator, I think a missing component of school is it the teachers? Is it the curriculum? I don't know. But when you get out of school, you should say to yourself, damn, I want to learn more.
It's almost universally accepted, too, that that's when your learning ends. When you get out of college, it's over.
Then you say you're done.
Yeah.
And if it does, then you're ossified in life.
Yeah.
And that's how, when the job market shifts, you're not ready for it because you don't know how to think. You don't know how to learn.
Right.
You don't, and it's the difference in the workplace between the person who gets an assignment. Say, Joey, Janet, I need you to do this. That's not in my job description. I'm not trained for this. That's one kind of person in a workplace. Another kind of person is, here's a new task I need you to do. Wow, I've never seen that before. Great, let me figure it out.
Right.
These are two completely different species of human being. And what the world needs more of is like the second case, where you take a new task and you say, wow, I get to learn. I'm gonna learn on my own. I'll ask people who know more. You just embrace the act of learning to satisfy your curiosity.
If you think of like what is education, like you're basically downloading data and algorithms into your brain, and it's actually amazingly bad in conventional education because like it shouldn't be like this huge chore. Like the more you can gamify the process of learning, the better. And I think unfortunately like a lot of education is very vaudevillian. You know, someone's standing up there kind of lecturing at people, and they've done the same lecture 20 years in a row, and they're not very excited about it. And that lack of enthusiasm, you know, is conveyed to the students. They're not very excited about it. They don't know why they're there. Like, why are we learning this stuff? We don't even know why. In fact, I think a lot of things people learn, probably there's no point in learning them. Because they're never using that in the future.
Because who's going to launch a rocket into space? I mean, that's just like,
yeah,
exactly. That never happens.
You have to say, like, people, I think, don't stand back and say, well, why are we teaching people these things? And we should tell them probably why we're teaching these things. Because a lot of kids just in school kind of puzzled as to why they're there. I think if you can explain the why of things, then that makes a huge difference to people's motivation. Then they understand purpose and just make it entertaining. But I think just in general, like conventional education should be massively overhauled.
I think that more of the education system should be around divergent thinking and divergent problem solving.
You think that's ever going to happen?
No, mostly just because of the power dynamics that exist. And like, if you've ever saw the documentary Waiting for Superman,
I haven't seen it.
It was one of the only movies that I've cried during because it was just the education system, and it was just showing how there are so many impediments to it getting fixed. It's not just one party. Like you've got the teachers unions, you've got the funding for the schools, you've got like, there's all of these things that are almost all diametrically opposed to one another. And then the only people who really suffer are the kids and then ultimately the country. So anyways, I do think that the solution is, I think the way that it'll have to get solved is that there is an alternative schooling system that gets developed that because of technology, Naval Ravikant said this, but technology democratizes consumption and consolidates production, which means if you're the best in the world, you get to do it for everyone, right? Which a lot of people don't like from a capitalist perspective, but that's also silly because I feel like that's just Pareto at work. But why would you not want the best math teacher teaching everyone math? Like it makes sense. And because there's zero cost of duplication and now everyone's kind of understands how Zoom works and how like we can continue to using life virtually, like there's really no reason to have, now it gets scary because teachers unions and what are all these people going to do for work and all that stuff. But like the value, just like the switchboards for when there used to be girls who would switch for telephones, they're like, well, what are we going to do when technology automates that? There will be other, like Web3 is just blowing up. There will be jobs as we solve new problems, we'll create new ones. And so to say like, we have to keep something that doesn't make sense, doesn't provide value to the system for the sake of it, doesn't make sense to me. And so I think that it would probably have to be a new architecture where the best people teach and then kids learn probably at their own pace, and the testing would probably have to change in order for it to be more real world. And if we wanted it to be real world, then I think you need to match conditions, which is real world, you have your phone, like now take the test.
Yeah.
Don't you think that like the schooling system would need to be somewhat localized though? Like you can't have one person teaching over too big of a
imagine one person controlling everyone's math.
Like if you have one math teacher, that's teaching everyone in the country, don't you think that there's like an advantage to having like, because each little part in each country has
and it doesn't
different
have to be
cultures
one
and
person. It's more like it could be one system. You know what I mean? Like that's more semantics. You know what I mean? And if the best person is more localized by the way they speak or whatever, then sure. But I mean, we're sitting next to Graham, who's got a massive personal finance channel. And so if you're the best at personal finance, then more people will go to you. So like,
That makes sense. Yeah.
If I were to change one thing about our educational system, this is the one thing I can confidently speak on.
Broadly, and the way I would change the science is another thing, but let me say broadly, I would say that I would de-emphasize the value the educational system places on what grades you got and figure out ways to assess, or rather to promote or to nurture your enthusiasm for learning. And because of this, what happens? You know what happens? There are people who get high grades. These are the people who pay attention in class and all their homeworks are handed in on time, and they might become valedictorian. And however, if you look at the biggest shakers and movers in society, in practically any field, none of them were valedictorians. The most, if you've read a lot of business, you know CEOs were never the top of their class, or entrepreneurs were never the top of their class. They were too distracted by other thoughts and ideas. Look at Richard Branson, who his headmaster said, you'll either be in prison or be a millionaire.
That's right.
And he ended up a billionaire.
That's right.
Because he was not following these educational rules about what would enable a teacher to judge that you will go far. And my grades in school were pretty average. Because they were average, no teacher at any time in my life, K through 12, 16, and 20, okay, would have ever said, see that guy Tyson? Watch him, he'll go far. None of them. Even though I was all into the university.
No one said that.
No one would have said that had you asked. Had you walked into the classroom and I'm in the class and asked the teacher, who's going to go far in this class? I would have never shown up on there.
I love that.
Any teacher.
Yeah.
Yet, it's not like I was a late bloomer. I've known I was interested in the universe since I was 9. And at age 11, you asked me what I want to be when I grow up, that annoying question adults always ask kids. I said, I want to be an astrophysicist. And I was in the astronomy club. And I walked dogs and used that money, walked other people's dogs, used that money to buy my first telescope. At age 14, and I had cameras. I had a dark room. Who knows what a dark room is anymore? But that's why I produced all my photography. All of this was going on, and it doesn't show up on a grade in my school. And so the teacher doesn't see that. They don't know it. They don't even care. They just care what grades you got. And so here I am growing myself and had this whole library of books. My parents would buy remaindered books. They cost 50 cents. They didn't know any science, but if they saw a science book or a math book, they bought it. I had the biggest library of any middle schooler there ever was, okay? So all of this is going on. And in high school, I went on an expedition to Scotland to view the stone monuments that are similar to Stonehenge, but many are not charted. And I was on an expedition to chart them. I was the astronomer brought in with archaeologists and anthropologists. All this is happening. I spent a summer in an astronomy camp living nocturnally in the desert, in the Mojave Desert, while I was in high school. None of that shows up as a grade. And all I'm saying is, a person is so much more than the numerics of their GPA, that if you only focus on a GPA, you will lose people. There'll be people who will go unrecognized, unsupported, unidentified in the school system.
How do we grade the other part, though? How do we grade?
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would now try to encode ambition or drive. Is there passion, especially? These are a little more abstract. And maybe the school, rather than judging you whether you have passion, they should find ways to instill passion within you. And then you're graded by how much more passion you had after the class than you did before, rather than how much you walked in there with.
I think the education system is broken, and teachers don't get paid or given the resources to actually teach students, and they're supposed to teach tests that they know don't help students. Students get educated on stuff that doesn't matter in the real world, and they go into mountains of debt for a piece of paper that doesn't make them anything to pay off the debt that they're in for the rest of their lives. And I hate all of it, which is why we started making the content that we do. And so this is one big investment that I'm doing to try and make my small dent towards helping fix that. And I obviously talk about business, that's what I know, okay, but one person can't do that. Like, I can't change, I can try, but I don't think one person's gonna change the world. And so I wanted to invest in a platform that would help other people do that for one another. And so whether it's like, you know how to paint and you want to teach people to paint, you know how to fix Hondas and you want to teach people to do that. Like, there are so many more useful skills that we can trade with one another. And I think Ben Franklin said, there's no more noble a deed than to help another know more, to educate. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And so, I mean, that's what I'm investing my dollars and my time into. And so, yeah, that's like my whole next year.